Today I'm going to create a melee fighter that will be good for most beginner players. I'm going to build it all the way out as a level 1 character, then show you how the character progresses through the levels. I'm going to make a solid frontline tank. I'm going to keep it fairly simple. You get a lot thrown at you up front in this game, so I want to build a character that you can play while you learn the basics, but at the same time, not give you a bad character for the sake of simplicity. Lastly, I'm going to try to stick with the cliches and stereotypes so you know what they are and you can see why they work. From there, you can decide where you want to go. Either stick with them or break the mold. I'm going to do all of this with some explanation, but I'm not going to go into all the details because beginners can get overwhelmed with what everything means and how everything works. It can all be pretty intimidating, and the last thing I want is to have someone starting a new game and decide that it's not fun before they even play. Some people don't like making characters. They just want to pick a pre-generated character and get to the game, and that's fine. Other people like making characters and making all the little detailed decisions as much as they like the game. This is going to be somewhere in between where I build the character for you, but you see the process and hopefully answer enough of your questions where you can start playing relatively smoothly. If you ask most people that enjoy Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition or 5e where you should start, they're most likely going to tell you to start with a character concept. You can think of a movie, show, or comic book character and try to figure out how to get from being a nobody to being like that person. Or you can think about how you would write an interesting character in a medieval story or gothic novel. So that's where I'm going to start. For the concept of this character, we're going to go with him being a young guy brought up with privilege. He's going to fight primarily with a sword and shield. This is often called sword and board. He's going to be motivated to prove his worth to his family, and since he's a bit of a yuppie, he's not just going to be some follower, he wants to be a leader. If this sounds like a good place to start playing D&D, tap that like button. And if you would like to see more parties built one character at a time, subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell. First we're going to choose our class. Many Dungeons & Dragons sources have you start with race, and that's fine. But if we're going to choose our role in the game, I think the first place you should look is your class. You already know from the title of this video that we're going to go with Fighter. The reason we're going with Fighter is because most well-rounded parties need someone who's going to be out front, taking the majority of the attacks. The Fighter class has that ability. They can wear heavy armor, so most of the attacks will miss, and because they get plenty of hit points, when they do get hit, they can take it. Additionally, because a frontline fighter is going to have enemies around them most of the time, they can put down some pretty good damage in close quarters combat. In Dungeons & Dragons, this kind of close-up and personal fighting is called melee. Next, we're going to start putting numbers into abilities. There are 3 ways to get numbers to put into these abilities, and the Dungeon Master, or DM, is the one who decides what method to use. There's rolling, which I can't predict what you're going to roll, so I'm not going to use that method. There's point buy, which could work out better for you, but I'm trying to keep this simple. So I'm going to use the standard array, which is a set group of numbers that the game designers decided would be both pretty normal for rolling and give you a high number, a low number, and a variety in between. Later I'm going to convert these ability scores into modifiers. If that sounds confusing, don't worry, it's not. Just keep in mind for later that only even numbers convert. There are a few exceptions, but in general, odd numbers don't do anything. So here's the standard array from highest to lowest. We have to assign each of these numbers to an ability. These abilities need to support our concept in both combat and role-playing. I like to start with the highest number first. With this character, this is where I need to decide if he's a little better at his combat role or his role-playing role. I think he's going to meet his goals better by prioritizing his combat role, so I'm going to place the 15 in Strength. Strength is going to let him be more athletic, he'll hit harder, he'll lift and carry more, and he'll be able to easily open jars for his mom. You know, the everyday hero kind of abilities. Most importantly, he'll be able to carry heavy armor. The second ability I like to assign is the lowest one. This is usually called the dump stat. Now, as a general rule, everyone should have a good range option because you never know when something is going to be flying or someone's going to be shooting at you from a distance. But this guy is going to use his ranged weapon as a last option. He's going to wear the heaviest armor he can get, so dodging won't work for him. And he's going to give maximum effort to get in close and block enemies from advancing. So the 8 is going into dexterity. Unfortunately, this means he's not going to do as well as other players when it comes to his aim when he's throwing or shooting. His initiative will be lower on average, which means when combat starts, on average, others will go before him. And skills that ask for dexterity won't be good, but you'll almost never use those skills. For a tank fighter, I could have easily dumped his charisma, but remember, he's going to be a leader too. So his ability to lead and get things done with his words, not his sword, are going to depend on his charisma. But he's not going to get to talk to somebody if he can't take a hit or if he's sick or poisoned. So we're going to bolster his durability by putting his second best number in, Constitution. I very well could have put the 15 in Constitution, but since this build is only going to 4th level, I thought it would be more fun for you to be able to hit more often and hit harder with a high strength. You'll use the higher strength a lot more than you'll use 1 to 4 extra hit points. Alright, I'm just going to work my way down from here. So next I'm going to put that 13 in Charisma. This is going to be his main role-playing stat. When someone approaches the party, he wants that person to come to him first. He might not have the best strategy or best ideas, but he's going to be in the conversation and make the final decision about what actions they're going to take, and he needs others to be convinced that he's making the best decision. He also needs to be able to take in information and resist others' charms, which is why he's going to put the 12 in Wisdom. Here, wisdom is your ability to perceive things, gain insight, or resist somebody's ability to manipulate your mind. If your physical health gets you out of bed and gets you to work, your mental health lets you do your job and do it well. That's what this wisdom score will do for us. It'll help us stay mentally in the game. And while we're talking about your mental game, that leaves us with our last score, our 10 that we're going to put into intelligence. You might think that as a leader, wouldn't we want his intelligence to be higher? And the answer is not really. Now, we don't want him to be dumb, but he's also not the type that's going to dig into books to become an expert on history or religion. He's also not going to be studying to learn spells. He just needs to be average intelligence. We're almost done with assigning ability scores. The only thing we have left to do for our ability scores is to see what our race is going to do for them. Remember I said earlier that odd numbers don't do anything? You can see we have 2 very important stats that are odd numbers, and we're going to fix that with our race. For our race, I chose the most cliche race in the game for a fighter, and that's the human variant. From what I've seen, the human variant gets used more than the base human, but I didn't write the game. Just don't get hung up on the word variant, because this is really just the standard. The human will first give us a +1 to 2 ability scores. We're going to take those 2 points to make our odd abilities into evens. As you can see, I've added a 1 to my strength, bringing that to a 16, and I've added a 1 to my charisma to make that a 14. I've also given you the modifiers, and this is why odd numbers don't do much for you. When you have a 10 for an ability, you get a 0 for a modifier. For every additional 2 points over 10 you have in your ability, you'll get an additional +1 to your modifier. For every 2 points you have under 10, you gain -1 point to your modifier, like in dexterity. A lot of people like to role play these low abilities, and I'd encourage that for fun's sake. So in this case, because the dexterity is below 10, I'd probably play him up as being a bit clumsy or slow. Through his life, Getting his feet stepped on or getting hit by open doors or thrown balls has been a normal thing. We're going to work our way through the rest of the human traits now. In the game, gender doesn't have to take a role, but since I'm going for stereotypes in my starter build, I'm going to make this character a male. If this is an issue for you, you can change the gender. It's not going to have an effect on the character. Since this is a stereotypical male human, and I'm in the US, I'm going to give him the most basic common name I can think of, John Smith. John's age is 21. He's a young adult with few extra years of additional training and life experience. He's also neutral good, which means he's motivated to help good people and fight evil, but he's not going to strictly stick to the rules and laws. Humans are medium in size, which is typical. He's 5'11". I like to make characters who are leaders to be a little bit taller in general, as a visual representation of their position in the party, especially if they don't have the ability stat to back it up. In this case, I made him above average in height because I want him to stand out above the party, but not stand out too much in a crowd. Height really doesn't matter much in the game. It's mostly for visualization. For weight, in general, you want your character to be on the light side of normal for the race. This is because when you ride animals or cross rickety bridges, your weight is going to be taken into consideration. With his weight, I wanted him to be a little beefy because his muscle weight should be taken into consideration. Visually, he should not be a scrawny fellow. Weight in the game is based off pounds, but you can consider them units if you're more familiar with the universal system of measurements. Same with distance and speed. Just think of them as units. To explain the speed, I'd have to explain combat, and I'm not going to do that right now. Just know that speed of 30 is normal. For an extra language as a human, I'm taking Elf. It's a pretty common language and he's high class, so I'm going to say that he'd probably have to know it for business or diplomatic purposes. For the human skill, I'm just going to pick the most often used skill in the game, Perception. I'm not going to dig into skills in this video, but perception is important. Being a human variant lets you choose one feat. There are a lot of feats out there, but one of the simplest good feats out there for any character is Lucky. I chopped down the description on the screen, but essentially, 3 times a day it lets you re-roll. You get to do this 3 times after each long rest. Ideally, you would use them when something detrimental is going to happen on a failed roll, like if you fail to save roll on a spell that's going to incapacitate or kill you. When you see something like D20, the D just means die or dice, and the number like 20 tells you how many sides the die has. So a D20 is a 20-sided die. Let's go to your background now. A background isn't necessarily going to determine who you are or your personality, but it kind of will in this character. It will help sculpt those personality traits and motivations. Being a noble gives you 2 more skills, so we're going to add history. For a game proficiency, we're going to choose chess. He's not a smart guy, but this will help justify any good strategic moves you make as a player. Language, we're going to take dwarf. Let's just say that his fighting instructor was a dwarf at some point and he picked it up over the years. For equipment, he gets a set of fine clothes that weigh 6 pounds or units, a ring of little value to anyone else, a scroll that certifies you as a noble, and what might be the best starting gold for any background, 25 gold pieces. Part of your background tells the DM how some people treat you too. As a noble, the lower class try to stay on your good side or at least stay out of your way, while the upper class are likely to treat you as a peer. Now we're going to get into your class. This is the part that is really going to give you the body to fill the role as a tank and gives you the tools you need to fight. At first level, you get 10 plus 2 hit points. That's your max die roll plus your constitution modifier. Every class gets starting proficiencies. A general definition of proficiency means that you're skilled or good at something. This is similar. Fighters are proficient with every type of armor and shield, which means you can wear all of it with no problems. Same with weapons. You can use them all and apply your proficiency bonus to the attack roll. fighters get to pick 2 skills from their list. John is going to take Athletic and Insight. Being proficient in skills means that you get to add your corresponding ability modifier and the proficiency bonus to the skill check. You can use other skills, but you're only able to add the corresponding ability modifier to it. At first level, your proficiency bonus is +2, and that doesn't change unless you take them up to 5th level. At first level, you get to choose between some equipment options. Here I've already made the good choices for John. Chainmail is the best you can get for a first level frontline fighter. Long sword and shield is your bread and butter. Light crossbow if you just can't get to the bad guy. And an explorer's pack so you can get around more or less comfortably. All your equipment weight totals 128, and your max carrying weight, which is 15 times your strength, is 240. We also get to pick our fighting style at first level. With the 6 options available, I'm going to take Dueling. You may think that defense or protection are more fitting for a tank, and you wouldn't be wrong, but I chose Dueling because it gives you a +2 to damage. Your ability to defend yourself and protect others is going to be good already. This will help you as a beginner to get the satisfaction of doing more damage and likely killing more enemies. Especially at low levels, this can mean the difference between a bad guy staying on his feet to hit you back or dropping him in one hit. If you ever think that you're sacrificing dealing damage so you can carry a shield, then worry no longer. With this attribute, you will match the average damage of a two-handed greatsword. This isn't a video on how to play D&D 5th edition, but I need to talk very briefly on one mechanic of the game before moving on, so you understand what I'm going to talk about next. It's the attack versus armor class mechanic. It's fairly simple. Everyone in the game has an armor class. The armor class is usually a number between 10 and 20. For physical attacks, whether it's punching, stabbing, or shooting, when you say you want to attack someone, you'll roll a 20-sided die and add a number or 2. We'll get into adding numbers in a minute. If that number you rolled is equal to or higher than the AC number, then you hit them. Roll your damage, and the DM subtracts that from the target's hit points. Same if they attack you. They roll, add modifiers. If they meet or beat your armor class, then they roll for damage, and you subtract that from your hit points. Next, I'm going to show you what your attack roll will look like and what your armor class is going to be. In the gray, you can see the calculations for how to get the attack and damage numbers. When you see something like 1d20, the D just means die or dice, and the number like 20 tells you how many sides the die has. The number before the D tells you how many dice to roll, so 1d20 is one 20-sided die. In the black is the total attack and damage, where I've done the math for you, for each weapon. Here I show you your armor and your total armor class. This is the number they have to meet or beat to hit you. As you can see, it's pretty high. At low levels, even if the bad guy has a +3 to their attack, the odds are they'll only be able to hit you 3 out of every 10 times they try under normal circumstances. Most low-level enemies will only get 2, maybe 3 attacks in a combat, so you're looking pretty good for a tank. If you do get hit, at first level you get an ability called Second Wind. Basically, once per long rest, you get to heal yourself. You roll a 10-sided die and add your fighter level, in this case a 1, and get that many hit points back. At first level, you'll average 6 hit points. At first level, I'd probably use this when I drop below 6 hit points, unless someone else is going to heal you. It's bonus action, so you can attack on your turn and still use it. If you want to write your own bio or background story and you don't want to see how the advancement works, then you can stop here, because next I'm going to give John Smith's bio, then after that I'm going to go through the fighter advancement up to level 4. In a character's bio, I like to cover their race in some sort of terms, whether it's a lineage or cultural heritage. I also like to cover their background and the history there, as well as their class and why they chose it or why their class chose them. I also like to explain their alignment if it didn't already get explained. These are the explanations for John Smith. Race: purely human family. He's got a 17-year-old sister, and she's the only one who's ever dated outside of the race. I'll really get into his background in a minute, but to summarize, his great-grandfather was the first noble of the family, and his father gained the title of patrician, but he has his eye on knight. At class, he trained since childhood in martial combat, but hasn't embraced it until recently. Alignment, he's been raised with good morals and knows the benefits that come with treating others with honor, dignity, and respect while being fair and just. Personal characteristics are additional ways to flesh out your character. They help you get to the core of who they are and how they act with just a few sentences. I usually look at the options given in the details of the background and handpick the ones I think work for my concept, or I'll modify them to fit even better. Occasionally I'll just come up with my own. Alright, let's go over his personal characteristics. Personality. I face problems head on. A simple, direct solution is the best path to success. Despite my noble birth, I do not place myself above others. We all bleed the same. Ideal. I mostly follow the rules, but I don't make an effort to know the rules. I believe in the greater good, so I also believe that our lot is to put our lives at risk in defense of others. Respect is due to me because of my position, but all people, regardless of station, deserve a chance to earn or lose respect. Bond. I'll die for those I regard with high esteem. My loyalty to my family is unwavering. Flaw. Because of my privileged life, I tend to treat peers like servants. I hide a truly scandalous secret that could ruin my family forever. I'm really going to set the foundation for his background here. When you create a character, it's usually a good idea to talk about the people closest to them. Parents, siblings, best friends, boyfriend, girlfriend, etc. This way, the DM has a way to motivate you to do something or give you help by bringing them into the game for you. For John, I wanted him to be born of money, but not really old money. So, I wanted to talk about his grandpa and grandma. So his grandfather, Rusty Smith, earned the title of squire while fighting side by side with a knight on a country road, using nothing but a smith's hammer, helping to defeat a group of bandits. It was just the two of them, defeating 7 bandits. At 40, he married a young woman of 20. Her name was Mary, had a son, and raised him to assume the position as squire. Rusty died from disease at 57. His grandmother, Mary, 63, still resides at the estate with her son and daughter-in-law. She often butts heads with her son over his decisions in his position. Alright, we talked about the grandparents, now we have to talk about the parents. So his father, Stephen Smith, helped his father establish a family estate at a young age. He assumed the position as squire at the time of his father's death when he was 17 years old. He married Whitney when they were both 18. After marriage, he spent the majority of the next 4 years assisting his knight in battle and nearby skirmishes. He had also spent 5 months in a campaign to help a brother knight flush out tribes of barbarians from his land. Upon completion of this campaign, he earned his title as patrician. 9 months later, had a son, John. Daughter Joy came 4 years after that. On the estate, Stephen built a much grander house, attaching it to the existing house but dwarfing it in size. Whitney spends most of her days now managing the help and keeping up with her daughter. Growing up, his mother mostly tended to him until he was 3 years old, at which time she was able to hire on a full-time nanny to share the load. Then when Joy was born, she hired a live-in nanny. Tutors took on teaching John at age 6 and continued instructing him part-time up until this day when he decided it's time for him to go off on his own. His parents, spoiled with wealth, often found it easier to have the nanny deal with the kids. Bad behavior was often corrected with lectures on character and values. Damages caused by the kids were often paid off instead of forcing them to rectify the error. This is his family's secret. His father, Stephen, has had an ongoing affair with his Lord Knight's daughter for the last 2 years, ever since she was 18. John found this out, happening upon them in the woods, while out on a walk. He confronted his father alone, but in the end, swore not to tell anybody about it. This isn't much of a personal flaw, but this can lead him to develop other flaws like distrusting people, or putting up a wall if someone starts talking about relationships. or thinking young women are gold diggers. However you want to make this a flaw, go for it. This entire bio isn't too flashy or memorable, it's pretty stereotypical, but it provides all the basic things you need and it gives DMs things he can use. If you're just making a level 1 character, then he's done. You have everything you need to fill in the blanks on your character sheet. If you want to see how a fighter progresses through the next few levels, then keep watching. Let's take John up to 2nd level. At every level you get to add more hit points. As a fighter, the rules let you either roll a d10 or take the average. I'm going to take the average and add my Constitution modifier for 8 more hit points, for a total of 20. John will get 8 hit points every level unless his Constitution is raised. At 2nd level you also gain Action Surge. Once per long or short rest, you'll get an extra action on your turn. This ability grows in value the more your party takes short rests. Of course, you shouldn't waste this on combats that aren't challenging. If you know you're going to face a boss guy, then hold on to it for that. Let's go to the next level. At 3rd level, the first thing we'll do is add 8 more hit points for a total of 28. At 3rd level, I also have to decide on a subclass for the fighter. Since I'm mostly sticking to the player's handbook for this, I'm just choosing between Battle Master and Champion. I'm going with Battle Master. The first reason I'm going with Battle Master is because I'm doing 2 fighter builds and I think the Champion will work better with my ranged build. The second reason is because this build will benefit from Battle Master much more than Champion. Battle Master can be much more complicated than Champion, but if you've been playing this character and have felt like it's been challenging to keep track of, then I still think you should stick with Battle Master, and I'll explain in a minute. The first thing you need to know about Battle Master is superiority dice. 4 times a short or long rest you can perform a maneuver, which I'll get to next, and add that d8 to the roll. There are more than 16 maneuvers, so I'm not going to show them all here. I get to pick 3, so I picked Precision Attack, Riposte, and Trip Attack. With Precision Attack, you can add a d8 to an attack roll. Trip Attack, you can try to trip someone and add a d8 to the damage roll. If you want to stay simple, the only maneuver you really need to remember is Riposte. When someone attacks you and misses, you get to use a reaction to counterattack, and if you hit, you add a d8 to the damage. If you're running to the front line like you should be, with your good AC, you should be attacked and missed a lot. You can only use 1 reaction a round. You should be using your superiority dice on this maneuver. Finally, we've made it to the 4th level. We'll give him another 8 hit points. Also at 4th level, I get to choose to add 2 points to my abilities however I want, or pick a feat. I'm going to add points to an ability score. Since you're a beginner, instead of adding one more thing you have to remember with a feat, I'm going to boost the strength score by 2 points, and this will make your score an 18. This will make the main things you do 1 point better and give you more time to master the maneuvers. So what'd you think? Did I meet my goals? I did levels 1 through 4. He'll do well on the front line with an 18 armor class and an average of 9 hit points per level. I'll give myself half credit for keeping it simple, because Battle Master maneuvers are not as simple as something like a Champion when you get a simple critical hit on a 19 and 20, which is good and simple, but I think we could do more with this character. And he's a good mix of stereotypes and cliches. If you liked this video or found it helpful, you can donate to the channel via PayPal. At the time I'm creating this video, 100% of the donations will go back into this channel to make this channel better. I have plans, and I can make those things happen faster with your help. I'm planning on being transparent with my channel and share periodic videos on what I've done with the money and what I need next. I think it's only fair to people who have actually donated to see what happens with the money. If you thought this video was helpful for you or would be helpful to somebody else starting to play D&D, share this video and tap that like button. And if you would like to see more parties built 1 character at a time, subscribe. That's all for my video. Have a good game.